A tall, dark figure stands in the middle of the corridor, surrounded by a gloomy aura. A hood is pulled over the creature's head, behind which the face is not visible. Many hands burst out of the purple portal, grabbing the body of a guy with white hair and a white shirt. They tear his chest, from where a blue glow can be seen. Someone's voice addresses the guy. Tears appear in the eyes of the man with white hair. The voice says that he found it. A figure of a dark creature appears in front of the guy with a staff in his hand, reminiscent of death. An electric shock runs through the body of a man with white hair, causing him to scream. The guy is suffering right in front of the creature in a dark robe. It talks about some kind of seed. You can see the terrible face of the creature under the hood, sharp fangs and burning eyes. A guy with white hair squeezes a toy in his hand and is sprayed with water. 3 hooligan guys are standing in front of him. One with short brown hair is holding a bucket in his hands, into which water has been poured. He asks if the main character has woken up. The guy with white hair looks up tired and uncollected with his red eyes. The bully brutally kicks him in the chest. He pushes the protagonist away, knocking him to the floor, and tells him to answer when asked. The guy with white hair hugs his transforming toy closer to his chest. The bully says that the boy did not let him go even when he was beaten. He is surprised at how important the toy is to him. Another bully tells the main character to make his look simpler. The main character frowns tensely, looking from under his brows. One of the hooligans grabs him by the shirt, lifting him up, and threatens him, insulting him in every possible way. He raises his fist, glaring cruelly at the white-haired boy and smirking. The guy with brown hair says that the main character will definitely let go of the toy today. His face suddenly changes to one of surprise, and he clenches his teeth. The bully's fist stops. His comrades look at the guy with white hair. He lies on the ground. His face is bruised, but his gaze is indifferent. A guy with brown hair notices in surprise that the boy doesn't feel anything even after so many blows. The bullies turn away, one of them holding a blue backpack. The leader of their group says that the guy with white hair is no fun and they leave. The red robot toy raises his hand and says it's finally over. The main character gets up from the floor, dusting off his trousers. He asks how the hooligans aren't tired of this yet. The robot wonders what the guy with white hair wants to do. The main character extends his hand forward, forming a spark of blue light on his middle and thumb. He says he wants to help the bullies a little. A blue flash is visible above the head of a guy with brown hair. He falls to the ground and there is a large lump on the top of his head. The main character folds his fingers again, forming a magic sphere at the tips. He tells the bully not to exaggerate, because people don't die from this. A new flash throws the guy with brown hair to the side, striking him on the cheek. The robot thinks about how painful the blow was. When the main character was about 5 years old, he sealed the spirit Parvash in his toy. The guy with white hair looks forward indifferently, creating a new stream of energy in his palm. The robot watches from the side, spreading its toy arms to the sides. He asks if the main character is happy now. Although the guy with white hair calls his little friend Parvash, he got the name from the name of the robot toy. As a child, the main character did not even realize that he was a magician, so the story that Parvash told was shocking. A calendar with a page on the 8th month is visible. Pages with other months quickly fly out of it. The main character lives in a world where there are absolute beings who control all dimensions. A creature in a dark robe is visible. It extends its clawed hand forward, holding a magic ball with the earth inside. Such beings are called seekers. There are countless dimensions in the universe. Near several planets there are different monsters. A big-headed alien, a monster with long tentacles and one eye, a creature with limbs in the form of wings. Seekers create and control channels that connect one dimension to another. The seeker, who is responsible for measuring the main character, saw in him the makings of a magician and planted the seed of the channel. A large hand can be seen above the child, placing a small seed inside the baby's chest. The seed will grow with his body. Several figures of people are lined up in a row, a blue aura spreading more and more in everyone's chest. In 20 years the seed must grow completely, and then the problems begin. The creature extends its clawed hand straight towards the man in the shirt. A golden glow appears in the person's chest. It tears the body and burns it. If the seeker discovers the protagonist again, the seed and he himself will become a channel between dimensions. A red portal is formed from the human body. This would mean the painful death of a guy with white hair. The toy raises 2 fingers up. Parvash says there are only 2 ways to survive in this situation. At the same time, he addresses the main character as Min Jun. The robot talks about creating a barrier that will allow them to hide their entire lives. At the same time, a little man with an asterisk on his chest is visible behind a protective dome. The toy also suggests using Min Jun's body channel to escape to another dimension. A man with a star on his chest projects a portal and runs into it. Parvesh states that in the second case, he will have to constantly live on the run. The main character looks exhausted at his comrade. A blue glow shines in his chest. He says that being on the run all your life is very difficult. The toy points a finger at Minjun, who raises his hand behind his head. Parvesh says that the protagonist must diligently perform magical training to create a barrier. Minjun admits that it doesn't sound particularly easy. The main character presses his hand to his chest, looking at the robot with puzzlement. He asks if he really has a talent for magic. Minjun is afraid that nothing will work out. The robot says that the growing up of the guy with white hair and the seed are the same. A small seed is visible, there are cracks on it, and a sprout breaks out of it. Parvesh places his hands on his sides, confidently standing higher on the surface. He says Minjun has plenty of time to learn how to create a barrier. The toy raises one finger up in warning. Parvesh says that this is only possible if the main character listens carefully and does not shirk. The guy with white hair agrees and looks forward decisively, his eyebrows furrowed. The robot points a finger at him, turning its head slightly. Parvesh says they should make the training more difficult from now on. Toys are visible in front of Minjun. The Rubik's Cube is illuminated with a blue glow. He holds it with his own magic. At the moment, the main character is 14 years old. He then uses a powerful flash, sending metal soda cans flying to the side. He is already 17 years old. Next, the guy with white hair forms a large yellow sphere that resembles a shield. At this moment he is 19 years old. D-Day arrives. A large shield covered with small translucent hexagons can be seen above the city. The main character shouts that the dome is ready. He raises his hands up, smiling happily. He is 20 years old. Minjun says he worked hard to finish the barrier. The main character lowers his face. Tears flow down his cheeks. He covers his eyes with his hand. The guy says he spent years just on this. Parvesh folds his toy hands on his chest. He says that with a barrier of such strength and magnitude, Minjun will be able to live without being caught by the Seeker. The main character jubilantly raises his hand in a fist, smiling widely. He says he can now enjoy what he missed out on due to training. The toy claims that it will be a little difficult. Minjun asks why in disappointment. The robot raises one finger, moving it from side to side. He says that the main character cannot go beyond the boundaries of the barrier. Parvesh also asks where Minjun will find money to live on if his allowance is almost gone. The guy with white hair looks ahead in disappointment, raising his eyebrows. Parvesh insists that the protagonist start thinking about paying the rent. The main character sits at the monitor and types on the keyboard. He doesn't know what to do because he doesn't want to earn extra money. Minjun wonders if there is any way to use the magic he has learned. His face changes to one of surprise and he raises his eyebrows. The monitor shows an article about actress Lee So-rin, who revealed that she was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. A girl with blonde hair smiles with her hand raised in the photo. It is also written that when it turned out that the reason for stopping activities was cancer, fans came out with support. The main character opens his mouth in surprise, clenching his hand into a fist. An idea comes into his head. He picks up a small branch with a turquoise bud at the tip. Minjun says that this is a branch of the regeneration tree obtained from Dimension 20. He decides to combine it with the Asham channel gland and purified water. The main character holds a bottle with a multicolored elixir in his hands. Images of plants and chemicals flash over his head. He says the elixir is ready. The doctor begins to talk about the patient's condition. A woman in a purple sweater and skirt cries in front of him. The doctor says that the patient has late-stage pancreatic cancer, so the girl will have to prepare for the worst. A woman in a purple sweater asks if there are other options. Actress Lee So-rin looks up with blue eyes, her face withered due to illness. She thinks that she will die in vain. The main character steps on the window, his body illuminated by a blue glow. He leans on the windowsill and bursts into the room with a smile, asking if Lee So-rin is lying here. Minjun holds a bottle of elixir in her hand. The actress wonders who it is. She looks lifelessly at the stranger. The main character smiles pleasantly, closing his eyes. The actress hesitantly calls him an angel. On the screen of Minjun's mobile phone, an article is visible about Lee So-rin beating cancer. At the same time, a transaction notification pops up. The actress transferred 50 million won to the main character's account. The main character looks at his phone balance in surprise, his mouth open. The robot behind is levitating in the air. Minjun says he found a job. He decides that he will make money through magic. In his head there is a picture that he is sitting in expensive and formal clothes, with a robe, right on the wads of money. The main character clenches his hands into fists and clenches his teeth, deciding that he will become rich. The action moves to Dimension 7E, to the Garden of Herbs of Life. Plants with black and yellow eyes are visible, their pupils in the shape of a star. One of the flowers is eaten by a creature with a pink mouth. It resembles a small dinosaur with curled horns and a blush on its cheeks. The main character lands right next to the creature, grabbing a flower in the shape of an eye. He shouts that he has finally found the herb of life. The main character immediately jumps into the blue portal, with a cauldron behind him. He calls it a great catch. The robot says in surprise that Min-Jun returned quickly. A guy in a red jacket stands in front of him. He holds a bunch of life grass in his hands. Min-Jun says that he is going to earn money. The main character asks if there are any new orders. You can see a lot of messages with orders on your phone screen. Parvesh says they have received many messages from celebrities, totaling about 30 people. The main character folds his arms across his chest, smiling confidently. He says it's all thanks to Lee So-rin, who was great at spreading the rumors. The guy with white hair says that celebrities must have been surprised because this remedy can help even in the later stages of cancer. Min-Jun sits on the sofa, leaning back and sipping his drink from a straw. He begins to talk about how 2 months ago he had nothing to pay rent. The phone rings, interrupting Min-Jun's speech. He picks up the phone. The contact is visible on the screen. Lee So-rin. The guy lifts the phone with a smile, addressing the actress as a buyer. She says that she has 1 elixir left for today, and that she would like more tomorrow. The actress recalls that the main character said that you need to drink a bottle a day. During the entire call, a panel with the girl's name is visible on the screen. Min-Jun smiles and raises his eyebrows as he says that the cost of materials has gone up recently. He says that if an actress wants same-day delivery, she will have to pay a 100% premium. Lee So-rin tells him not to worry about money and thanks Min-Jun. The main character places his thumb on the end call button and thanks the customer in return. He goes into the blue portal. Parvesh turns to him, asking if he is leaving again. The main character says that he has an urgent order from Lee So-rin and he doesn't have a minute to rest. The robot folds its legs, sitting down on the table. He says that apparently Min-Jun has become a businessman. The toy turns its head to the side. In the protective dome outside the window you can see a crack with a red sphere inside. The robot wonders what it is. Parvesh looks in surprise towards the broken barrier, his eyes glowing. The dome begins to crack, creating a strong golden glow, similar to an electrical discharge. A stream of blue energy hits the ground. At this moment, the main character wanders through the snowy ground among the corpses of terrible creatures. He wonders why there are so many monsters in this dimension. Min-Jun thinks about adding a percentage for danger. The main character with a dissatisfied face picks a flower dusted with snow. He laments that the plant grew in such an unfavorable place. The main character brings his hands to his chest, controlling the blue glow. He thinks about getting home, taking a shower, ordering food, and also wondering if he should play the games he missed, because Legend 20 lies untouched. Min-Jun is already stepping foot into his native dimension and says that in the evening he can drink a can of beer. The main character looks away, closing one eye. He decides to also sleep. Min-Jun looks to the side as a huge explosion passes outside the window. The barrier shatters into pieces. A blast wave engulfs the city. She throws cars aside and breaks roads. The main character opens the window, watching in horror the scene on the street. He asks what happened in the city. Min-Jun turns his face to the robot behind him. Parvesh says a channel has appeared on Earth. The main character looks down at the robot as it sits down on one knee. Min-Jun asks his friend to explain what is happening. The toy says that he doesn't know the reason, but a portal suddenly opened in this dimension, and that now the most important thing is that it is new. Parvesh sparkles with his blue eyes, looking at the main character seriously. The robot says that during the process of creation, the portal destroyed their barrier. The dome shatters while a red portal glows inside it. The main character looks forward displeasedly, with his mouth wide open and frowning. He thinks that the barrier is broken and that the Seeker will be able to find him. In Min-Jun's imagination, a picture immediately emerges of how a dark creature grabs him, trapping him between his palms. Sweat rolls down the protagonist's face, revealing his anxiety. He thinks that he will die soon. The action moves back 2 hours. The huge portal glows red. People crowd around it, not understanding what it is. Someone asks them to stand back and follow instructions. Something resembling a hand begins to protrude from the frame of the portal, made of flesh. It quickly tears the flesh and gets out. Creatures with scary mouths and big heads jump out of the portal. They jump straight into the city streets. People look at them in fear, their eyes wide with horror. They rush in panic away from one of the creatures that opens its mouth. A crowd of citizens is running along the roads from monsters attacking them. The robot looks at what is happening sternly and says that this is no longer funny. He stands in front of a screen on which the news broadcasts an attack by unknown creatures on the city. The robot says that the Ashfam giants have appeared right in the middle of the city, and that this situation is suspicious and very serious. Parvesh explains that although these creatures have a crappy character, they do not prey on small creatures like humans. At the same time, an image of an alien appears with a long tongue and a staff in his hand. The robot raises one hand, clenching it into a fist. He says they better be ready and asks where Min-jun is. A red car with a flashing light rushes down the road. An order is received to evacuate people and prepare barricades. The man in the yellow jacket stands right in front of the angry monsters who open their mouths. A reporter wearing a helmet and holding a microphone is broadcasting news from the scene. He says firefighters and police are already on the scene. The robot leans away in horror, raising its hands in front of itself, and says that the sirens need to be turned off. One of the monsters moves its fangs near its mouth, creating a sound wave. The toy says that loud noises provoke monsters even more. Another creature also makes sounds, with prominent veins visible on its body. The monster's eye widens and the pupil contracts. He slams his hand into the road, overturning nearby cars. A girl with long brown hair looks up, frightenedly asking for help. Parvesh shouts at Min-jun to come to his senses. The action moves to the present time, to the main character's house. He breathes heavily, his face down and his mouth parted. A guy with white hair grabs his chest, from which there is a glow. The robot says the searcher hasn't found Min-jun yet. He adds that one must remain calm in such situations. Parvesh tilts his head slightly. He thinks that even though he said to calm down, there are neither materials nor time to restore the barrier. The reporter is heard saying that they are near the Han River where the monsters appeared. Parvesh turns his head towards the sound. The monitor shows the reporter grabbing his helmet while monsters crowd behind him. The man says that right now the military is trying to stop the creatures and minimize the damage, but the battle is fierce. Guys in camouflage helmets open fire from rocket launchers. The shells break against the shield that the monster with the staff forms. One of the soldiers looks forward in horror. He asks why the weapon didn't work. Monsters use some kind of shields. A creature with a large head uses a staff to form a dome around itself. Parvesh realizes that in the hands of the monster he finds a barrier tree that allows him to create barriers quickly and easily. A staff appears behind the toy, surrounded by a blue glow. The robot thinks that the main character and he will be able to use the barrier tree. Min-jun looks ahead tensely, trembling with fear. A small blue jar flies into his head. The main character turns, looking at Parvesh in bewilderment. The robot explains that the military will be able to defeat the giants if they use powerful weapons, but the city and the barrier will be destroyed to the ground. One of the monsters takes the bus in its paws, lifting it. Parvesh says people are dying right now. The main character raises his hand to his chest, gritting his teeth. He says that if he escapes to another dimension, he can escape. Robot says he knew Min-jun would think about it. Parvesh says that the searchers will be able to track the main character there without any problems, but they must take into account that then they will have to run for the rest of their lives. Red eyes are visible above the portal from which Min-jun jumps out. The main character looks at his friend in despair, asking what he should do. The robot points its finger to the side and asks to look there. On the monitor you can see a large image of a monster with a staff in his hand. Parvesh says with the branch the barrier problem will be solved. The main character hesitantly raises his thumb to his lips. He wonders how he can defeat such monsters since he has fought similar giants. The unsightly body of a large-headed monster is visible. The robot says that the creatures are larger than the monsters Min-jun has encountered, but they are still a race of low intelligence that uses primitive magic. Parvesh suggests remembering all the hardships of training that the main character has gone through over the years. The protagonist's gaze becomes more confident. He tenses his eyebrows. Parvesh says Min-jun can win. There is a confident sparkle in the eyes of the guy with white hair. He stands facing the window, where a crack in the barrier can be seen. The main character sees new creatures emerging from the portal. Min-jun grits his teeth, furrowing his brows, and says he just needs to deal with them. People are heard screaming. A crowd is running along the road. A small child falls to the ground. His mother turns around, looking at the boy in fear. The monster raises his big paw right over the baby as he calls for mommy. At this moment, the main character jumps from above, followed by a blue strip of light. Parvesh appears behind Min-jun. The guy looks at him and asks what's wrong with the child. A creature falls lifelessly to the ground, yellow juice leaking out of it. People scream that the monster has suddenly died. Parvesh tells the protagonist not to worry as the mother and child are fine. The boy hugs his mother, they both cry. The main character looks to the side, his eyes shining decisively. He aims at the huge creature, which has revealed its round mouth. Minjun says it's time to get rid of the ugly monster. A wild roar of the monster is heard, raising its head. It raises its paw directly above the main character, preparing to strike. The main character looks up at the monster in surprise, with his mouth slightly open. The creature brings its paw down heavily, smashing the ground beneath it. Smoke comes from the monster's fingers. Someone's voice asks what happened, and the monster instantly turns towards the sound. Minjun finds himself levitating in the air with an orange sphere around him. He says that he definitely cast a perception impairment spell. Parvesh says it didn't work because of the magician who is holding the barrier tree. A creature with a staff in its hands screams angrily. A purple glow emanates from it. The robot adds that if the magic becomes stronger, it will quickly be detected. The main character clenches his teeth, resolutely looking towards the monsters. Parvesh on his shoulder says they should start with confidence. He convinces Minjun that he is strong. The creatures reach out with long, huge paws towards the guy with white hair. He suddenly looks away, frowning. The heads of the creatures are pierced on one side. One of the monsters continues to pull its paw forward. The main character jumps in the air so that the monster fails to strike. The monsters crowd under Minjun, stretching out their paws towards him. The main character looks up, his hair fluttering. He casts a dissolution spell, almost closing his palms and forming a green sphere between them. Inside the green glow, figures of a bear and a wolf with open mouths are formed. They rush at the monsters. Sticky slime flows down the creatures, dissolving them. One monster raises its paw, but holes are already forming in its body. A creature with a barrier branch appears behind other monsters. It forms a purple shield at the tip of the staff. The dome expands to include all creatures. The main character looks down in bewilderment and says that there is a barrier tree there. Parvesh happily declares that this is what they need. A large explosion occurs above a bunch of monsters. Minjun quickly flies out of it, falling on the creatures. He flies and at this moment presses his hand to his chest, calling on the pebble from a dry stream skill. The guy with white hair swings his hand, bringing down hot coals directly on the monsters. A purple pentagram forms underneath it. One of the embers touches the barrier. The monster carefully watches the falling coals. He sees in horror how the shield gradually cracks. The embers destroy the creature, cutting it into pieces. You can see a bunch of residue from the monsters in their yellow juice. One dying monster raises a paw covered in liquid. An explosion is heard in front of the main character, and a column of light is seen. People gather in a crowd near the remains of the monster. They reason that the monster suddenly died. The main character holds a fiery sphere in his hands, looking at it. He thinks that he is even stronger than he thought. Parvesh clenches his hands into fists and praises the guy with white hair. Minjun thinks it's all thanks to training. There is a branch on the floor, swirling at the end. Minjun calls it a barrier tree. The main character puts his hands to the staff. They glow with a blue glow. Minjun thinks that with this he can restore his shield. A yellow glow appears under the guy's hands. A sharp stream of energy rushes upward towards the shield above the city. A spiral of golden aura closes the hole in the barrier. Pieces of the dome are slowly being restored thanks to the power of the staff. The main character points his finger at the barrier, smiling. He asks Parvesh if they succeeded. The robot says they did it. The barrier shines again over the roofs of the buildings. The main character happily declares that the barrier has been completely restored. The guy with white hair presses his hand to his chest and smiles with relief, saying that he thought he was going to die. Parvesh turns his head towards the interlocutor, addressing him. He asks what they will do with the portal. The fleshy frame of the portal can be seen. The main character thoughtfully raises his hand to his face, looking up. He suggests putting up a barrier and sealing it. Parvesh looks forward thoughtfully and remains silent. He turns his head sharply and declares that he needs to go inside. Minjun looks at the robot in surprise and confusion as he raises two fingers. The main character looks carefully at a huge portal surrounded by a purple electric charge. He furrows his brows, looking ahead intensely. In his mind he wonders if Parvesh wants to go there. The robot explains that there are two reasons for this. You can see a huge stick lying on the ground. The first reason is the barrier tree. We need to make provisions in case the dome collapses again. If even the stupid Ashvam had it, then there should be many branches on the other side. The second reason is the monsters themselves, because they can come again. The corpses of killed creatures and the orange liquid underneath can be seen. Parvesh says that the monsters need to be intimidated so much that they never even think of taking a step in this direction. The huge red eye with a narrow pupil is visible. The robot says that there are risks because you can meet seekers of other dimensions. Parvesh explains that monsters usually don't pay such special attention, but using too much magic will definitely attract attention. He says the benefits are worth it. Minjun watches the portal carefully, clenching his hands into fists. Parvesh asks him to look at the chaos around him. He says that he does not insist and the final decision is up to the guy. Minjun looks away hesitantly, pursing his lips. His gaze changes to a determined one. He looks forward confidently. The action moves to the Dela dimension. Tall trees are visible in the emerald light of the sun. The axe and spear cross, sparks fly. Then the weapons touch each other again. In the middle of the forest there are 3 blue trolls. They bare their teeth, looking ahead with displeasure. One of them, a troll with red hair, frowns angrily, calling the situation a disaster. In front of them are 4 white creatures with long heads. The troll wonders why so many Ashvamas have appeared here. The creatures gather in one large group, attacking the trolls in droves. One of the monsters raises its paw to strike, screaming shrilly. The axe and spear are raised into the air to prevent the blow. Trolls fight, fighting off monsters from all sides. A troll with a long scythe thrusts a spear straight into the monster's mouth. A troll with a red beard hits the monster so that juice flies out of it. A troll with dreadlocks pays attention to something to the side and shifts his gaze. The creature jumps on him, forcing him to retreat to the side. A plump troll fights off a monster with a weapon. He turns his head to the leader and says that there is no end to the enemies. Ashvam all arrive, leaving behind the dead corpses of their comrades. The troll says that there are many more opponents than he thought. He turns his gaze to his partner, addressing him as Hickam, and says that they need to retreat since they will not cope. A sudden blue wave washes over the battlefield, pushing monsters aside. The monsters fall dead, leaving yellow marks on the ground. The trolls wonder if some creature of another race has arrived. A troll with red hair opens his mouth in surprise. In front of him stands the main character, whose body is engulfed in a blue aura. He asks where to go now. A guy with white hair looks forward determinedly, frowning, and wonders where he can find a barrier tree. A dreadlock troll named Hickam points his finger at Minjun. He asks in horror if it is a man. The main character still stands with a confident face in front of them. The trolls look at Minjun and the toy behind him, pointing their fingers. A troll with red hair notices that the main character's clothes are unusual. Hickam asks the leader if humans can use such magic. The main character points his fingers at the trolls and asks why they are surprised. The robot turns its head towards the blue creatures. He says he thinks they are impressed by a man who can use magic. The main character looks at Parvesh in surprise and asks if there are people in this dimension. The robot says that he needs to look at the Akashic records. Parvesh raises his hand, and the image of a library appears behind him. He explains that the Akashic records contain all the knowledge of the universe. The robot reports that about 10,000 people live in this dimension. A troll with a red beard clenches his teeth, hearing the sounds of monsters. A new crowd of Ashvam appears behind, following each other. The trolls find themselves trapped and surrounded by monsters. Their leader turns his face to Minjun and says that they would like to help, but their situation is quite dangerous. The trolls raise their weapons, looking around. Monsters jump on them, exposing their mouths. The main character throws his hand forward, commanding to attack. A troll with a red beard points a blade towards the monsters. Yellow blood splashes onto the creatures, blinding them. Hickam brings his axe down directly onto the monster's paw, striking it. One of the creatures raises a staff, directing a sphere of fire towards the enemy. A blue glow erupts from the ground. A wall appears in front of the troll with dreadlocks, protecting him from the blow. The leader of the group puts his hand forward. A blue glow can be seen emanating from it. A troll with red hair asks if his partner is okay. The main character looks from the side, raising his hand. Minjun gets into a fighting position as the trolls fight. He says that he thought about using large-scale magic by borrowing divine power, but he was afraid that this side would also suffer. The main character puts his hand to his mouth and calls out to the troll leader. He turns his head in bewilderment. Minjun frowns and looks at him decisively, and then asks him to use protective magic and cover everyone with it. The troll puts out his hand, asking in bewilderment why he does this. The main character says that he is going to use a large attack, so they need to hide so as not to be hit. A troll with red hair looks thoughtfully behind him at the crowd of monsters. He forms a blue sphere in his hand. The troll admits that he doesn't know about Minjun's plan, but wants to try. He lowers his hand to the ground so that it is completely covered with blue streaks of light. Stone walls rise out of the ground. They appear on the other side, surrounded by a blue electrical discharge. The trolls find themselves protected by a barrier. The main character leans over, his red eyes sparkling. He jumps into the air as the dome almost closes. Minjun grabs his chest, pushing it apart, blue light oozing out. The main character calls on Storm Adeligo. A stream of blue energy fills the space next to Min-jun. The trolls grab their ears in panic and say that it is very noisy. The leader breaks out of the stone wall, throwing stones to the sides, and asks what is happening. His face changes to one of surprise and he looks around. All monsters in the radius are killed, and the trolls stand in the center. The troll looks at the main character standing next to him and says that he has never seen anyone capable of such a thing. Min-jun raises his hand, smiling, and says that he came from another dimension. The trolls look at their new comrade with a smile, holding out their hands to him. Hickam introduces himself by name. Then Paulo, a troll with blonde hair and a pigtail, introduces himself. Then the floor is given to the leader. His name is Gur. He thanks Min-jun for her help. The main character extends his hand, shaking the big troll's finger. He says his name and smiles. Gur clenches his hand into a fist. Hickam sits down next to him, and Paulo looks away. The red-haired troll says he's glad to meet you. He asks how Min-jun came to their dimension. The main character corrects him for mispronouncing his name. He then shows the trolls a branch of the barrier tree, saying that he is looking for something like this. Gur and Hickam look at her carefully. A troll with red hair thoughtfully raises his hand to his face. He says that if Min-jun needs something like this, then the whole forest is filled with them. The troll points to the huge trees around. Min-jun looks around with his hand outstretched. He asks about the fact that all trees are barrier trees. Gur leans towards him, pointing his finger at the main character. He says that this is why the forest is called Great. He then asks why such a powerful magician would do such things. The main character smiles embarrassedly and says that he has a difficult situation. Gur sits down next to him, smiling decisively, and looks at Min-jun. He says they are creatures with similar goals. The troll with red hair explains that they came here because of Ashfam. Gur says that they are giants of the business and have been living here for generations. A troll with dark hair is seen fighting a monster. Gur explains that 100 years ago, a portal suddenly opened and they have to fight the Ashfam, who crawl out of it. A branch of the barrier tree can be seen from which the discharge is emanating. Gur also says that their tribe is in constant danger, so they also came for the barrier tree. Hickam puts his hands on his belt and says that he is starting to worry about someone, so he needs to cut down the trees faster. Gur looks at him approvingly and says to start. The main character, surprised, asks who they are talking about. The trolls explain that a seeker lives in the great forest. The guy with white hair looks ahead in surprise. Hickam puts his hand forward, gesturing as he speaks. He says that the seeker of their dimension lives here, which is why he is called the seeker of the great forest. A troll with dreadlocks looks to the side with one eyebrow raised. He reasons that they rarely see him, but this is still someone else's house, so they would like to quickly take the trees and leave. Min-jun's eyes sparkle yellow. They ask him what's wrong with him. The space around the main character becomes dark. He frowns and wonders why the seeker lives here. He starts talking about the amount of magic he used. The robot behind him asks the main character to wake up and says that it's time for them to get out. Min-jun winces, mouth parted and eyebrows raised. He raises his face, a faint red aura covering his body. Min-jun says they should leave now. A sound is heard behind the guy. He looks to the side. The trolls and the main character are thrown aside because of something that lands in the middle of the clearing. Min-jun squints his eyes as he wakes up. He slowly opens his eyelids, looking to the side. His face instantly changes to one of fear. A creature appears with one eye and long tentacles all over its body. The trolls and Min-jun look at him in horror. The main character opens his mouth wide in amazement. His pupils constrict and sweat rolls down his face. He understands that in front of him is a seeker from another dimension. The guy raises his head up, making a pitiful face. A creature with one eye directs its gaze towards the trolls and the main character. The trolls cower in fear, making guilty faces. The seeker says that they not only entered his territory, but also dared to use a large amount of magic. The creature's tentacles envelop Min-jun in fear. The seeker says that this is very impudent, since they disturbed his sleep. The red eye, covered with veins, carefully watches the intruders. The creature looms over Min-jun and asks if he will have any excuses. The seeker tells him to try if he doesn't want to die. The main character wonders where he got such terrifying magical power. The guy steps back in horror, mouth wide open. He notices that because of such an aura he cannot even speak. Min-jun says he hoped to escape the seeker and regrets that his death will be so futile. His pupil narrows and his eyebrows furrow decisively. The seeker refers to Min-jun as the person with the seed of the dead seeker in his chest. The creature darkens, directing its gaze directly to the main character. He asks why the guy is here. The main character raises his eyebrows in surprise and naivety. He is even more surprised, realizing the words spoken by the creature, and looks at the Seeker in amazement, asking him to repeat himself. The main character opens his mouth wide, sweat rolling down his face. He asks if his Seeker is dead. The creature with one eye looks closely at Min Jun. He understands that the main character knows nothing. The Seeker explains that the dragon, the Seeker of the Earth, died 3 days ago for an unknown reason, but the death was palpable. The figure of a dragon is visible with an open mouth and a glowing eye. He is suffering from pain. The creature with one eye says that after the death of the dragon, the barrier of Min Jun's dimension collapsed. The dome surrounding the Earth disintegrates into small geometric shapes. The Seeker explains that in this gap a channel has appeared between the dimensions of the Dela Giants and the dimension of Min Jun. The main character looks at his trembling hands and realizes that all his work was in vain. The creature with one eye looks intently at the person in front of it, moving its tentacles. He asks how a guy who can use divine magic through a seed channel didn't even know about the Seeker's death. The Seeker asks if the spirit behind the main character also knew this. Parvesh silently looks at the dark creature. The Seeker raises one of the tentacles. He says that the main character amused him a little, so this time he will let them go. The trolls ask him to wait. They turn to the dark creature with pitiful and submissive faces. Gur says the threat to Ashfam is very serious as local indigenous people like them are on the brink of survival. The troll with red hair raises its face, looking hopefully at the Seeker. He asks him to defeat the alien race. The main character looks carefully at the trolls sitting on their knees in front of the Seeker. He thinks that Ashfam are considered aliens here. Min Jun wonders why open such a channel and create a conflict between dimensions. The creature calls trolls foolish mortals. The main character raises his eyebrows in surprise and opens his mouth. The Seeker's red eye glows brightly through its own tentacles. He says that for him trolls are like insects, then there is no point in worrying about their death. The creature reminds that it was they who caused a commotion on his territory. The troll with red hair clenches his teeth and looks up pitifully. The Seeker insists that the trolls are talking nonsense and don't understand it themselves. Gur bows his head, pursing his lips in disappointment. The main character shudders, sweat rolls down his face, and he clenches his teeth. The guy says that the creature's anger is felt through magic. The Seeker lifts Min Jun's face by the chin with a tentacle. He says the trolls showed him something interesting. The Seeker throws them off with a powerful push and says to consider it a gift. The main character falls face down into the ground, lying on it. He raises his face, squinting one eye. Min Jun grabs his head, rubbing it painfully, and says it hurts like it's falling apart. The trolls ask if the main character has woken up. Gur raises his hand over him, rubbing his head, and says that the Seeker has let them go. He also asks if Min Jun got hurt somewhere. The guy puts his hand on the ground and rises. He says his head hurts, but otherwise he's fine. The main character looks down tensely, pursing his lips. He again thinks that the Seeker of Earth has already died. The guy admits that due to the large amount of new information, he does not understand anything. The trolls call Min Jun and say that there is a barrier tree in front of them. Several large ornate tubes of wood lie on the ground, and 3 bags stand nearby. Travelers wonder where the tree came from. Gur brings his hand to his face, looking ahead thoughtfully. He says they didn't do it and that it might be a gift from the Seeker. The main character looks carefully at the logs in front of him, raising his eyebrows. He asks what is in the bags, paying attention to the bags standing on the ground. Min Jun sticks his hand into one of them, something glowing blue inside. He takes out a small stone surrounded by a glow. Parvesh says that this is the seed of the barrier tree, and that it is a very useful thing that should be preserved. The main character hears the sounds of the trolls and raises his head, holding the seed with 2 fingers. The troll with red hair raises his hand to his forehead, his face taking on a pitiful expression. He reasons that the village will be safe for a while, but they will still have to fight Ashfam to get more barrier wood. Gur says that he did not imagine that the Seeker would be so indifferent to them. Min Jun turns his head towards his comrade, looking at him thoughtfully. The main character looks up, and a picture of a monster with a round mouth pops up in his head. He thinks that Ashfam is much larger than Min Jun thought, and they are furious, which means that closing the portal with a barrier will not be enough, since the monsters will be able to push through it with numbers. The main character remembers how monsters scattered people and cars around, killing everything in their path. Min Jun addresses the leader of the troll tribe. Gur scratches his chin, looking upset at the guy with white hair. The main character raises his finger up, pointing at the troll with red hair. He says that he will make sure that Ashfam will not be attacked again, and the trolls will move the barrier trees closer to the canal. The trolls look at the guy with white hair in surprise. Gur and Paulo, a troll with blonde hair, look at each other intensely. Paula wonders what their human friend is thinking. Gur admits that it is difficult to understand him. One of the trolls lowers the barrier tree directly into the ground. He says there are probably thousands of Ashvamas around. Hickam, a dreadlocked troll, looks away while holding the trunk of a barrier tree. He notices that the main character is simply sitting on the ground, meditating. Gur looks at Hickam thoughtfully and asks if he saw the magic Min-Jun used. The red-haired troll explains that the protagonist may have a plan they never would have thought of. The trolls set up barrier trees. Hickam looks at them proudly, and Gur points his fingers to the side. He says it's better to get back before they attract attention. The trolls turn to Min-Jun, who is meditating in the middle of the trees. The main character is surrounded by a faint blue aura. His eyes are closed. He is focused on his thoughts. His face is calm and relaxed. Min-Jun stands in front of multicolored portals with his hand outstretched. He says one of them is weak. In front of him, against the backdrop of a blue portal, is a view of a creature resembling a sea monster with fins on its back. The main character says that the terms of the contract are too strange, so he refuses. Parvesh appears behind Min-Jun and closely monitors his actions. He says that making a contract with a demigod and summoning him is a good idea, but he doesn't know if there is anyone suitable. The robot explains that some demigods offer contracts with strange conditions, and others can go crazy and kill the summoner. The figure of a monster with horns and a long tongue is visible. It crushes the creature in its hand. The main character notices something and says that he looks good. An image of a monster appears, its figure resembling a naked girl with long ears. Parvesh calls this creature the Black Kirin. The main character carefully examines the girl holding onto a tree branch. Parvesh says that he is a strong demigod, but with a cruel character, and the terms of the contract are also quite complex. They see a picture of a girl standing in front of strange plants with mouths. The robot says that the Black Kirin likes to grow strange flora from other dimensions and is unlikely to enter into a contract with someone who is weaker. The main character takes out the seed of the barrier tree, holding it with his fingers. Min-Jun points it out to Parvesh and asks if the seed would do if it's so valuable. The robot admits that it can work, but this is one of the most dangerous demigods. A picture appears in the imagination of a large monster holding a creature by the collar with its claws. Parvesh clenches his hands into fists, insisting that Kirin was once in a bad mood enough to kill a contractor. The main character convinces his friend that everything will be fine. Min-Jun remembers a creature with a red eye, a monster with a long tongue, and Ashvin with a round mouth. The main character says that if you compare the call of Kirin with the risks that happened recently, this is nothing. The protagonist looks at the portal and wonders if he can pass through the Kirin channel in avatar form. Parvesh says Min-Jun can do it now. The main character extends his hand forward, touching the red barrier, and offers to go inside. The blade of golden scissors can be seen near the stem of the plant. A monster girl with long hair and glasses trims a plant, blood gushing out of it. Drops of blood fall on her face. She hears a sound behind her and tenses up. Kirin looks back, turning his head, and sees the main character in front of him. He hands her a seed, surrounded by a blue glow, and offers to sign a contract in exchange for this item. Kirin turns her body to Min-Jun, her glasses shining. She grabs the frame, adjusting it. The girl takes off her glasses, revealing her red eyes and a row of sharp fangs. She says that a funny guy came to see her. A portal is visible among the ruins and deserted land. There is a brown stone on it. The rumble shakes the ground, causing the rocks to jump. A crowd of white Ashvin with long legs rushes forward. The main character stands nearby. A ball of raised dust rushes past him. He opens his mouth. Min-Jun ironically says that the monsters took a long time to get there. The guy with white hair sees a line of monsters approaching him. He says that the number of creatures is terrifyingly large. He suggests starting. A blue sphere forms in his palms, emitting a glow. It turns into a portal. The main character looks down and summons the Black Kirin. A stream of blue energy bursts straight out of the open portal. A monster girl with a sly smile appears behind the rubble of stones. Parvesh watches what is happening carefully, mentally turning to Min-Jun. He says the guy actually summoned Kirin. The girl puts her hand to her forehead like a visor and looks intensely into the distance. She notices the crowd of Ashvin approaching and asks if the main character seriously called her for such a thing. The guy with white hair turns his gaze to Kirin, who raises her hand with long nails. Min-Jun says that this is the most suitable option. The girl squeezes her clawed hand, twitching her fingers, and says that the main character is right. Her body becomes covered in muscles. She says that she will fulfill her part of the contract. The veins on Kirin's legs swell and stand out. She says she hasn't taken this form in a long time. Her body becomes huge, her hair becomes longer, and something like a long mask appears on her face. The girl throws stones around her. The main character covers his face with his hand, protecting himself from the air flow. Kieran strains her legs, pushing off the ground. She leans forward, charging at the monsters, and screams that she will kill them all. Kieran rises directly above the Ashram crowd. She freezes in the air, putting her hand forward, and quickly falls towards the creatures. Her body falls to the ground, crushing one of the white monsters. An explosion occurs on the battlefield, the ground cracks, and a ball of dust rises. All white monsters within the Kieran radius appear dead. Kieran, in his new form, raises his face, gritting his strong teeth. She sees a new wave of monsters coming from all sides. The veins on Ashram's paws swell and they tighten their grip on the weapon in their hands. The monsters attack Kieran from above, raising their paws to strike. The girl puts her clawed paw back, swinging. With one jerk, she tears the monsters apart, yellow liquid sprays out of them. Kieran lands blow after blow. She finds herself in Ashram's crowd, fighting bravely. Kieran thinks that this race of monsters is even worse than insects. She threatens to kill every creature. The girl easily cuts the heads of the crowded monsters. The creatures fall apart, screaming piercingly. Some of them are cut into two halves along the body. Kieran deftly turns around in the air, swinging his claws. She impales monsters behind her with her tail. The girl shakes off the corpses, raising her tail. One of the Ashram sticks out its paw, splashed with the juice of its fellows. The girl quickly rushes towards him, bending down. She tears the creature apart by opening her mouth. The girl is covered in yellow blood as she fights. The main character watches from the side as Kieran jumps in the crowd of Ashram. He tenses his face, gritting his teeth and frowning. Min-jun asks if this is the power of the half-black Kieran. Parvesh says now the main character understands everything. He says that the channel inside Min-jun's chest is different from others, as it is capable of not only passing through high-level portals, but also summoning powerful beings. The main character raises his hands. A small portal is visible inside his chest. Parvesh says that with the current power, the protagonist will not be able to control the summoned creatures. The figure of a girl with dark hair is visible. The other half of her has a transformed form. She smiles slyly. The main character raises his hand to his chin, frowning thoughtfully. He thinks about what will happen if he can use them as well as today. Kieran approaches Min-jun, extending her hand towards him. She turned back into her previous form. The girl says that everything is already over. The main character looks at the pile of monster corpses lying on the ground. Min-jun hands the blue seed to Kieran and says that it is the seed of the barrier tree that he promised her. The girl looks at him with a bored look. Her face changes to an insanely cunning one and she smiles widely. Kieran says Min-jun is a pleasure to deal with. The main character stands in front of a huge blue portal. He says that the barrier around the canal is ready and they are done with their business here. The guy with white hair holds out his hand and offers to go back. Min-jun walks through the portal, closing his eyes as a blue glow surrounds him. He finds himself in his home dimension. The portal leads straight to the wreckage of the road. The main character looks down with raised eyebrows and says that this is Seoul. He is above the city and looks at it from above, reasoning that the Seeker is no longer here. Parvesh says Min-jun is free. The main character opens his eyes in surprise, his mouth parted. He looks at the toy behind him, who has his hands on his side. Parvesh says that all this time the main character was training and hiding, so he could not enjoy life. The robot asks if Min-jun has a place he would like to go. The main character thoughtfully rubs his chin with his finger. An idea comes to his mind. He raises his eyebrows and looks ahead, declaring that there is such a place. A crowd of people walks along a narrow street past glowing buildings. The main character is surprised by the number of passers-by. A guy with white hair is wearing a white t-shirt. He smiles joyfully and looks at everything around him. He says that he has only seen this street on TV and on the internet and that it is big and bright. Min-jun lifts his head up in delight, opening his mouth in a smile. He mentally notices that he talks like a hillbilly. Suddenly something catches Min-jun's attention and he looks to the side. A guy with white hair is standing right in front of the entrance to some building with a red Six Guys sign. Min-jun admits that this is his first time seeing this franchise. He thinks they sell hamburgers there. The main character finds himself inside, greedily eating a burger. Min-jun smiles happily while sitting at the table and says that it is very tasty. Then the main character finds himself in front of the mirror. He adjusts his jacket and looks at himself with glasses, asking if it suits him. Next, Min-jun finds himself in front of a huge teddy bear in the middle of the street. A guy with white hair plays a slot machine. The toy falls out of the mechanism. After a long walk, the main character drinks a drink, holding a straw in his mouth. He holds the glass with one hand and looks around. The main character says that this is the same city, but it looks different, as if it has become larger. Min-jun says it's very different from what he saw from his room. The main character smiles slightly at the corners of his mouth, looking down. He says that since the seeker is no longer there, he can go on a journey around the world. The reporter's voice announces that the KOS news program has begun. From a huge screen located on a high-rise building, foreign publications are broadcasting breaking news. A man in a business suit and glasses sits in front of the camera and says that a few days ago an incident occurred near the Han River. He says similar phenomena have begun to be observed all over the world. The headline below states that strange creatures have started appearing everywhere, and that action needs to be taken. The main character looks at the screen in fear and surprise. His whole body is shaking. It comes from the TV that this is a report from Kim from New York. A man in a jacket with a microphone in his hands points to a huge robotic square monster. He says that a huge stone statue has appeared in the middle of the city. The reporter says there are no details, but residents are very surprised. The main character looks up in horror from behind him. A woman is broadcasting on another screen. She says strange creatures have appeared in Houston. From somewhere on the side they are broadcasting about the same problem from Bangkok, Thailand, and on the other side, from Austria. The reporter reports that Rio de Janeiro has gone underwater. A stone statue can be seen, destroyed by the flow of water. Another voice says that an army of strange creatures has broken into Berlin. Red monsters that look like dinosaurs are attacking people on the city streets. There are also reports of a huge monster that turned Egyptian Cairo into a sea of fire. A huge creature resembling a snake can be seen directly above the pyramid. The main character opens his mouth wide in fear. He understands that channels have opened all over the world. He screams loudly, throwing his arm back and raising his head. He drops his drink. The long, elongated creature opens its mouth, where a sphere of fire is formed. A monster hangs over the city. People scream in horror and run away. A reporter in a helmet and vest is broadcasting on the news. He says that Cairo turned into a sea of fire after the appearance of a huge snake-like monster. Parvesh folds his arms across his chest while sitting on the sofa with the main character, who is playing a video game console. The robot says that this guy has always been a recluse. He then adds that this is a real shock for Min-jun. Parvesh asks to see that everything is happening because of the channels and asks to put the console down for a second. The main character gloomily buries himself into the console, ignoring his friend's words. He turns a dissatisfied glance at the robot and refuses. The toy turns its head to the guy with white hair and tells him to do as he wants. The robot folds its arms across its chest, looking thoughtfully to the side. About 60 channels have opened around the world. The main character takes a closed pose, placing his feet on his feet, and hides behind the console. He realizes that he has been holed up in a corner of his room for a week. Any race of monsters can appear from portals. A giant dome can be seen over the city against the background of the night sky. The main character says that because of this he has to sit under the barrier. Traveling and walking sound interesting to Min-jun, but games and food are enough for him. The main character looks at the console, holding it with his hands. The guy smiles madly, raising the corners of his lips. Parvesh admits that Min-jun is starting to scare him. The night sky is visible. The moon is covered by a dark cloud. Pieces of the barrier fall next to the high-rise building. The main character shudders in his sleep, closing his eyes. He stands up abruptly, frowning and screaming. He doesn't understand what the noise is. The guy holds the blanket with his hands. His face expresses fear. Parvesh says someone is knocking on the barrier. The main character states that he cannot sleep for 2 days. The robot rubs its forehead with its hand and looks away. He says that only a creature with magical powers can notice the barrier, so it's worth checking. The main character covers his face with his hand, opening his mouth wide. He says he is not given a moment's peace. The robot looks at him from the side and tells him to get dressed. The door to the apartment slams shut with force. Parvesh says he doesn't hear that sound anymore. The main character walks decisively in a red jacket along the sidewalk. The robot asks if Min-jun remembers the direction of the sound. The main character closes his eyes, squinting. Golden impulses emanate from his consciousness. A guy with white hair points his finger away from him and says that you need to walk 500 meters to the southeast. The robot warns the main character not to relax, as this may be a dangerous race. The guy covers his ear with his hand, closing his eyes, and says that this annoys him. The main character decisively heads to the side, moving along a deserted street. He suggests first seeing who it is. Parvesh says that Min-jun hasn't gone out for a walk like this for a long time. The main character walks along the sidewalk near the shops. Minjun says there was no reason for him to go that far. The protagonist wonders if they have left the barrier. He is moving towards the pedestrian crossing. The robot says that this is where Mokdong ends. The guy with white hair raises his hand to his chin, frowning. He suggests increasing the size of the barrier. Parvesh points to something ahead. A large blue dome can be seen behind the roofs of the buildings. The main character looks from around the corner of a building on which there is a sign that says Jongmak Elementary School. He moves closer to the small blue barrier. The main character wonders that someone has placed a barrier on the border with his barrier. Minjun puts his hands on his hips and frowns. He states that this dome is needed to hide magical power, but you cannot hide from his gaze. A guy with white hair reaches his hand through the barrier. He ends up inside and finds himself in a natural area. The main character realizes that he is in another space. Parvesh warns him that they don't know what could be here. Someone addresses the characters, asking who they are. The main character opens his mouth in surprise and turns his head. He notices something and his pupil constricts. In front of him stands a creature with white hair and fluffy ears, and next to him is a guy with blue hair. The action moves to Langley, Virginia. A long building is visible, supported by columns. A red monster that looks like a dinosaur cuts a man apart and they open fire on him. A creature with a long tongue opens its mouth, revealing its small, sharp fangs. Someone presses the remote control, freezing the picture on the TV. A bald man with glasses looks to the side. He says that the world is now in complete chaos due to an alien invasion. A man with blonde hair, in a suit, sits in front of him, with a long monitor in the background. A man with glasses and a white shirt says that the abilities and tendencies of monsters are difficult to predict, unlike humans. However, the CIA cannot abdicate its responsibility to protect national security. A man with blonde hair frowns, looking carefully at his interlocutor. The bald man closes his eyes, raising his eyebrows. He says they will have to use a race of aliens, so they captured one of them. Attached to the dossier is a photo of a red-skinned creature with a bandaged face. The bald man says that the interrogation will be carried out with the object IR-76, Aka Eraser, capable of brainwashing religious people using their faith. The dark-skinned man looks up seriously at the man in the suit. He asks Agent Simon to answer honestly. The intense gaze of a man with glasses is visible. He asks if Simon really doesn't believe in gods. A man with white hair frowns. At this moment, his colleague clarifies that he may not believe in religion, but in some abstract beliefs. The man in the suit opens his mouth and resolutely says that he denies the very existence of gods and that it has always been this way. A man with glasses slightly closes his eyelids, looking from under his brows. He says Agent Simon will go on command. A guy with blonde hair finds himself in a black car. He looks ahead as the desert landscape passes behind him. Simon speaks displeasedly about his director, rhetorically asking what he thinks of him. The man adjusts his tie, closing his eyes. He mentally reasons that it is stupid to go through an interview for a simple interrogation. Simon says he is an elite agent who inherited his calling from his father. The car drives up to a 5-story building. The driver reports that they are there. Simon walks behind a man wearing a bulletproof vest and glasses. The guy with blonde hair asks if he asked for any information before. His interlocutor says this is the first time this has happened. The man with glasses looks slightly upward thoughtfully. Simon frowns dissatisfied behind him. The man in the bulletproof vest says that if the stories are to be believed, there is some kind of seeker living in the monster's dimension who is looking for something in their world. He also adds that the creature thinks it's interesting. The agent turns his blue eyes to the side. He talks about the object that the seeker is looking for. Simon glances at the dossier tablet as he walks down the hallway. The man with glasses says that this item is connected to the existence of the Earth. A guy with blonde hair carefully runs his eyes over the papers. He says the information requested may give them some ideas. His colleague confirms this. Simon sees a newspaper clipping. The photo shows a city on fire. This is the Mokdong area, Seoul, South Korea. A man in glasses places a card on the entry device on the door. He says the creature is in this room. A man with blonde hair steps inside as soon as the door opens in front of him. He looks decisively at the creature with a bandaged head who is behind the glass and greets him, calling him Mr. Eraser. The red-skinned monster sits with his back to his guest. He purses his pursed lips, lowering his head. His hands are tied across his chest and he spreads his bare feet wide apart. The monster sits motionless and silent, white clothes on it can be seen. Suddenly his face changes, the bandage bracket expands, allowing him to see his eye, and his mouth distorts into a crazy smile. Eraser says he's glad to see the man. The main character is in a new dimension. He looks down with a surprised face. In front of him sits a woman in a kimono with cat ears next to a guy with blue hair and gauze on his forehead. The girl bends her arm at the elbow, raising it. She and the guy with blue hair bow their heads to the main character and greet him as an elder. Min-jun looks at the bowing people in bewilderment, wondering what's wrong with them. His eyes widen in surprise and his pupil constricts. He assumes that these are cosplayers or spies who have let their guard down. Parvesh takes a careful look at the creatures and wonders what kind of race they are that has ears. The girl raises her head with a smile. The guy with blue hair turns his gaze to the main character. He says that meeting an elder with such a powerful soul in this city was a surprise to them. The guy with blue hair bows his head again, closing his eyes. He says that they haven't been in the human world very long, so their knowledge is limited. He asks the main character to share his wisdom. Min-jun asks them to wait. He stretches out his hands to unfamiliar creatures, asking where they came from and what race they belong to. The main character admits that he does not understand why he is called an elder. The girl with the ears turns an awkward glance at her companion. She comes close to Min-jun, her eyes sparkling. The girl says that if you stay in the human world for a long time, there are times when you lose some memories. The guy with blue hair grits his teeth in displeasure and turns away. He doesn't want to take care of a decrepit old man. The main character says that he heard everything. The guy with blue hair brings his palms to each other, forming a sphere of blue light. He frowns and directs a stream of blue energy slightly forward, declaring that he wants to show a dream that will help bring back memories. The guy with blue hair sends out a stream of energy by blowing on her. The main character is enveloped in a green-blue aura. He carefully examines the energy around him, pursing his lips, and says that this is the first time he has seen such magic. Min-jun wonders if she is connected to the mind. The main character looks to the side, raising his eyebrows in surprise. The girl with fluffy ears says that the races that crossed the wall, have been living together for a long time to avoid the evil creature. Min-jun opens his eyes in surprise, looking forward. The world is spinning in front of him. A city appears, where creatures of different races frolic and communicate in the square. Nearby are buildings in the Chinese style. Everyone is dressed in kimono. This is Bacrock. The girl explains that many different races have lived here for a long time. Wolf cubs and a goose rush past the main character. He moves away. The girl adds that they were faced with overpopulation, so they went in search of a new home. The situation became more complicated when creatures from China migrated to them. A crowd of different creatures enters the wooden gate, including a catfish in a kimono, a panda girl, a monster with a mask, and others. The girl with the ears comes up to Min-jun and looks at him from the side. She says that the evil creature recently disappeared, so they have a chance to move in. The main character asks what evil creature she is talking about. The girl smiles naively, lifting her ponytail. She says it's about a dragon. Min-jun mentally realizes that she means the Seeker. A picture emerges of several creatures standing near a sphere in which a blue portal can be seen. The girl says that there was a sudden rupture in space. The elders of Bacrock decided to find out what was going on. The main character puts his hand to his face, looking thoughtfully to the side. He thinks that by the gap in space they mean a channel. The girl says they went to Hanyang to investigate. You can see a memory of a girl and a guy with blue hair flying through the city at night. The guy with a smile informed his companion that they would soon be there. Suddenly he slammed face first into the dome with his arms outstretched. The girl sank down next to the blue-haired guy on the ground, calling him Garam, and said that he was bleeding from his head. The girl explains to the main character that this is how they encountered his barrier. Min-jun furrows his brows in pain and purses his lips, declaring that they are the culprits for him waking up. The girl raises her hand, putting it to the side. She asks the elder to borrow his wisdom, because the human world has changed a lot, but his barrier is still impressive. Garam folds his arms over his chest and shouts that people are not capable of such great magic. The main character puts his hands forward, making a guilty face. He says that he is not an elder and that he is an ordinary person. The guy with blue hair grits his teeth in displeasure and says that the old man is talking about this again. The girl with the animal ears comes very close to Min-jun. He clenches his hands into fists and fearfully asks what she wants from him. The girl touches the protagonist's white hair with her fingers, smelling it. The main character wonders why she is doing this. His eyes are wide and his eyebrows are raised. A girl with cat ears pushes the main character away with her hand. She leans over with displeasure, tensing her hands. The guy with blue hair asks what's wrong with the smell. She says that the main character is definitely a person with a very strong soul. The figure of Min-jun is visible, with his hand outstretched, a blue light glowing inside him. The guy with white hair squints his eyes in displeasure. The action moves to Texas, El Paso. A 5-story modern building can be seen. The agent says he wants to ask Eraser one more question, why the channels are opening. The creature with red skin smiles madly and looks at the interlocutor. It says it has heard this question many times, but it is difficult to answer. Eraser says his English isn't good enough to describe it. The guy with blonde hair looks down with displeasure and talks about wasted time. He sits with his arm outstretched and addresses the creature through a microphone. Simon says that it is difficult for him, since conventional interrogation methods do not work, and his opponent is an alien who can be brainwashed. The agent puts his hand to his forehead, lowering his face tensely. He wonders if it is possible to continue interviewing a being with superpowers that can control the minds of religious people. He remembers the figure of a man with brown hair in an official uniform. Simon wonders what his father would have done in his place and whether he would have done it easily. 2 pairs of eyes appear behind the father's head. Simon says his dad is legendary and talented. Eraser addresses the agent. He stares at him through the window, asking if he's okay. Simon flinches and looks up in surprise. He brings his hand to his mouth, clearing his throat awkwardly. The man asks to explain why the monster asked for information. Eraser smiles slyly through the glass. The interrogation is filmed. The creature says he needed answers just as much as Simon did. The agent says that in this case he will ask first. He shows a video on his tablet showing the corpses of white monsters. He asks Eraser to tell him everything he knows about what is happening in the video. The red-skinned monster bends over, another eye visible through the bandages. He sees the monster's flesh spread on the bones in the middle of the road. Simon says that the creatures were not killed with their weapons. The remains of corpses with red eyes are also visible right on the road. Eraser smiles widely, revealing strong teeth. He growls and asks what this place is. Simon stares at the monster intently as he holds the tablet. He says that he will ask the question first. The agent frowns, creases appearing on his face. He asks why the monster is interested in this incident. The Eraser carefully fixes both eyes on the interlocutor. He says his English is bad, so he would like to talk on a conscious level. Simon says he can't allow it. A third eye appears on the monster's face. He says that perhaps these were the spells of that magician. Simon asks for the last word. The Eraser bows his face. In front of the agent lies a folder with sheets of paper. The creature says that that magic is called from a higher world and that the 2 worlds cannot be connected, since the difference between them is too great. The agent asks if magic belongs to a higher dimension than their own. He clarifies that initially this was impossible, but someone succeeded. The Eraser confirms his words. Simon looks at him directly, his mouth slightly open. He asks why the monster needs this magician. Eraser clenches his teeth, sitting motionless behind the glass. He says that the seeker of his world wants to ask the magician a question and connect what cannot be connected. The agent clarifies why the seeker needs this. The Eraser looks at the man carefully. He already has a 4th eye. The monster says that the seeker wants to learn how to do something like this. Simon grits his teeth, staring at Eraser. He asks what a seeker is. The monster repeats that he wants to speak with his mind. The guy with blonde hair asks to speak in English words that the monster knows. Eraser says it's too complicated and he can't explain it. Simon repeats the old question about why channels are opened. The monster still sits indifferently on the chair. He repeats that this is also very difficult and that he wants to speak with his mind. Simon clenches his teeth, lowering his face in displeasure. He realizes that Eraser is not cooperating, and this begins to irritate the agent. A guy with blonde hair looks through his notes in a notebook. He thinks that he has not received the answers he needs and there is no progress. Simon says his father's advice would be helpful right now. The agent says that his father has always been his support and idol. An image of a man in uniform with shoulder straps appears. A shadow falls on his face. Simon wonders what advice he would give. The Eraser figure moves behind the glass. The agent sees how many eyes have opened. He is horrified to see many eyes peeking out from under the bandages and wonders how many the monster had opened to begin with. A man at a table in a light uniform sits in front of Simon with a smile. He praises the agent for his work and says that it must have been hard for him. The guy with blonde hair admits that the director's help has borne fruit. A man in a light uniform pours an alcoholic drink into glasses with ice. He says he hopes to hear good news. The agent takes one of the glasses, saying that there will definitely be good news. The director in a light shirt laughs. He smiles and raises his glass, saying that Richard would be glad to see Simon and would be proud of his work. The agent freezes, a shadow falls on his figure. He places his hand on the table, taking an alcoholic drink in the other. The guy with blonde hair asks in surprise who the director is talking about. A man with brown hair raises one eyebrow, still smiling, and says that we are talking about the agent's late father. He freezes abruptly, the smile disappears from his face. A man in a light uniform looks forward in horror, frowning, and realizes that the object of faith can be not only God. Simon pulls out a gun, shooting directly at the director's head. The corpse falls to the floor, a pool of blood forms under it. The fake father's inner voice praises Simon. His eyes glow red as he lowers his gun and agrees with Dad. A man in armor and glasses is hiding with a weapon behind a wall. He speaks into the walkie-talkie saying Echo. He asks to tell Alpha that the conditions of containment were violated. The man announces code red and asks for help. The barrel of a gun appears behind him, and the man with glasses freezes in horror. The SWAT team kills him. Everyone looks at the corpse with cruel faces. Helmeted soldiers march, surrounding Simon. He places the card at the entrance. The door opens in front of him. A strip of light falls on his face. A red-skinned monster in a suit sits on a chair. He says the agent did a good job calling him son. The creature looks like a person. It sits with its head down. He then turns to Simon, eyes all over his face. He smiles. The creature orders the agent to go. The eyes of a man with blonde hair glow red. The man turns to Eraser, who smiles slyly. He says that we need to go to the city of Seoul, a city with multi-story buildings and the night sky can be seen. The voice of the main character is heard saying that there should be no smoking in his house. Min-jun points his finger at Garam, a guy with blue hair who is holding a thin pipe in his hands. Garam says these are not cigarettes. The main character says that he doesn't care and that he doesn't need the smoke. A girl with fluffy ears and a tail eats pizza, holding another piece in her hand. She says the dough is very tasty. The main character asks how many pieces she has already eaten. Min-jun puts his hand behind his head and closes his eyes in displeasure. He regrets that he let the creatures into his place. Parvesh folds his arms and asks why Min-jun brought them to the house. The main character looks at the robot with displeasure while Garam talks with his friend. Min-jun says that the creatures can do something if you let them outside, and he's curious about something. The main character sits down at the table, addressing the girl with pizza in his hands. He asks to tell who they are. The guy with blue hair frowns and says that they have already been reported that they are residents of Backrock. The main character asks what it is. The girl with fluffy ears looks displeasedly at Garam and says that they are indebted to this man. The guy leans his head on his hand and says that you can't tell people a lot. The girl insists that Min-jun help them check the space gap. She remembers how she, Garam, and the main character stood at the portal on the roof. She also recalls that they were able to give a report to Backrock. The girl looks straight at Min-jun, her eyes glowing blue. She says that she sees this guy's strong soul, which is comparable to the elders who lived for thousands of years. The main character looks up, pursing his lips. He thinks that the girl has the ability to see the soul and that this is an unknown form of magic. Min-jun looks displeased at the girl sitting in front of him at the table. She tells Garam that Min-jun asked where they came from. As beings who crossed the wall, they have lived in these lands since the beginning of time. Everything was in abundance in the world. Even then they collaborated with some people. Storks wearing hats and carrying bags fly over the creatures on the ground having fun. The girl says that they thought that life would always be like this, but something happened on one ordinary day. A monster with one eye and a horn on its head is weaving something out of rope. He turns around, looking back. The girl says that an evil dragon has appeared. A huge creature with a purple tongue and sharp fangs stands in front of a small monster. The ancestors fought with all their might, trying to fight back. The dragon scorches the ground with a powerful stream of fire where monsters with weapons stand. The girl says that they suffered greatly and left the land. Creatures with downcast faces move in a crowd to the side. The evil dragon claimed the mainland as its territory. The main character folds his arms over his chest, looking to the side. He says there is no record of such a war in their history. The girl looks ahead thoughtfully. The sparkle of fire is reflected in her eyes. She says that at that time human civilization was too small. The girl says that after their defeat, their interaction stopped and people forgot about them. The main character watches Garam lying on the sofa and sleeping. He asks why the guy is sleeping so peacefully in the middle of a conversation. The girl says that Garam is contacting Backrock. The figure of a sleeping guy with blue hair is visible. He puts his hand under his head. The girl explains that Garam can do this in his sleep. The guy with blue hair wakes up with one eye open. The girl sits in front of him with her hands folded in her lap. She asks what they say at Backrock. Garam rubs his eyes. He tilts his head slightly, looking around indifferently. Garam says that he reported the stability of the fissure in space. He adds that the elders want to hold a meeting, and they will receive an answer in a few days by letter. The girl says that they will have to stay here. Garam turns his head towards her, sitting on the edge of the sofa, and says that it is so. The main character asks who gave them permission. He folds his arms over his chest, frowning thoughtfully. Min-jun thinks that the form of magic that interacts with dreams and sees the soul is unknown to him. He decides he will take the opportunity to find out more. Garam presses his hand to his stomach, where the grumbling comes from. He opens his mouth displeasedly, holding his stomach, and says that he is tired of using force even in his sleep and that he is dying of hunger. The main character points his finger at the remaining piece of pizza in the box and invites the guy to try it. Garam notices a toaster sitting on the table. He calls it the right thing. A guy with blue hair bites a toaster. The main character reaches out to him, asking what he's doing. The girl says that the Garam race eats metal. Min-jun snatches the toaster from the blue hair guy and says he can't eat it. Garam jokingly attacks with his fists, asking what he should eat then. The guy with blue hair says that guests need to be taken care of. The main character closes his eyes in displeasure. He's thinking about simply kicking them out. The city at night is visible. People walk along the streets. Min-jun says he was going to the hardware store and asks why the girl is going with him. She replies that she wanted to see what was out there. She notices tall buildings and different smells and says it's very different from before. The main character looks at her walking behind her. She is wearing a bomber jacket. Her fluffy ears are gone. Min-jun says that the past is many years old. The girl says how amazing everything is. She sniffs, closing her eyes and stretching her lips, catching some kind of smell. She heads straight to the food counter, smiling, and asks Min-jun what smells so good. The main character stops her, addressing her as Chinchu, and asks her not to come close to the food. He walks up to the counter with a woman wearing glasses walking behind him. Min-jun still agrees to buy Chinchu's food. The main character turns and elbows a woman with a green bag. He apologizes with a smile. The woman in red glasses smiles back and hands over a leaflet, inviting Min-jun to believe in the Jeong religion and thereby be saved. The main character ignores the woman, leaving her with an outstretched leaflet in her hand, and turns to the white-haired girl. He asks her to wait and Chinchu points out what she wants to eat. The woman with glasses holds a stack of papers and walks away. She moves along a deserted city street among buildings where lights are burning. The woman carefully steps along the road. It reaches the local church with a high tower and a red cross. A woman opens the door and a streak of light slips into the dark room. She looks around, noticing a black door with red trim. The woman asks where everyone went and sees that not even the light is on. The green sign is visible and the door to the worship hall is ajar. A woman walks inside, holding her bag, and notices a man on a bench. She addresses him as brother. The woman leans towards him with a smile, noticing how hard he is praying, and asks if the leader is in the office. The man in the blue shirt sits with his hands folded, his eyes rolled back, drool running down his chin. He honors the Lord God. He repeats this phrase over and over again. The woman with glasses looks at him with pity and misunderstanding, smiling awkwardly. She stands up, clutching her bag and papers, and looks at the man from behind as she walks forward. The woman says that sometimes he gets too immersed in prayer. She knocks on the door, raising her hand, and addresses the leader. She looks outside the door with a smile, asking if the leader is sleeping. The woman is horrified to discover the brunette lying on the floor, covered in blood. Her face is contorted with fear, sweat flows down her cheeks. A red monster leg appears behind the corpse. He says people have a very funny religion. The woman notices the creature in front of her in horror. Her pupils constrict. The monster says that their leader doesn't believe in God at all. He extends a clawed hand to the woman and asks if she believes. The woman tries to move away, but runs into a man in a blue shirt behind her. She asks who Eraser is and threatens to call the police. The man in the shirt grabs her head, squeezing her with strong hands. She screams in horror. Her pupils reflect the image of a monster leaning towards her. He asks her to prove her faith. Eraser smiles predatorily, his eyes turning black. The woman trembles in horror, fear freezes in her eyes. The monster's reflection in her eyes swirls. The pupil becomes empty, without glare. She honors the Lord God.